and moderated by Kavi Yaga. It's my pleasure to introduce Kavi to all of you. We also have an interpreter, Uma Damodar. About Kavi, couple of words about him, a couple of lines about Kavi. Kavi is originally a software engineer and a development economist, and has decided, to take up the noble profession of writing. She's the author of Walking in Clouds, A Journey to Mount Kailash and Lake Manas Sarovar. She's been awarded the prestigious George Garrett Award for Fiction in the Judge's Choice category. It's for her collection of short stories, and this was awarded by none other than Kavi Yaga. Over to you.
I'll introduce both of you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here on a Sunday morning. I realize what a feat it is in Hyderabad to venture out Sunday morning and turn up on time. So thank you all for being here. And you will not be disappointed. The writer that we are here to listen to today, Jaroslavas, is a wonderful writer who I had not heard of before because we don't have a lot of access to Lithuanian literature in India. So I was extremely delighted to read his books and to be introduced to his work. Let me tell you a little bit about Jaroslavas. He is a Lithuanian sci-fi and surrealist writer of Ukrainian descent. His books have been translated into English, French, German, and other languages. He is a graduate from Lviv University. Did I pronounce that right? Lviv? Lviv University? Lviv University. And a postgraduate from Maxim Gorky Literature Institute, Moscow. His books received many prestigious nominations and awards, including the BBC Book of the Year in France, and the finalist of the European Award, Utopolis. The Last Day 2008 was shortlisted in the UK for the International Rubery Book Award. He received the Lithuanian Government Prize in 2020 for his contribution to Lithuanian literature and its promotion in the world. Please welcome Jaroslavas. We also have here a good friend, an old friend, and our interpreter, Uma Damodar Sridhar. Uma is currently head Department of French and Francophone Studies at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, and teaches French language, linguistics, teaching methodology, and translation. She worked at the Alliance Française of Hyderabad as a teacher and translator, and as in charge of the Translation Bureau and Deputy Director. She has published articles and translations in national and international journals and is a co-translator of an anthology of poems, Butterfly Caresses. She has been associated with Hyderabad Literature Festival since 2012. Welcome, Uma. So this is Jaroslavas' book. It's called The Last Day. It is a collection of his short fiction. And this book, some of the stories in this book have actually been made into films. And I'm not surprised because a lot of his writing is very cinematic and evocative of place and time. So I would definitely advise you all to, if you haven't got it yet, to get it and read it. I would like to actually begin by talking a little bit about your life, Jaroslavas. You are of Ukrainian descent, and you moved as an adult to Lithuania, and you write and have published in Lithuanian, in Ukrainian, in French and Russian, and Italian? No. Okay. Thought I'll take a chance. So he's... no, sorry.
Not in Hindi also.
Not in Hindi or Telugu also.
For a moment.
But the exciting news is that your book will actually be translated into Hindi as well pretty soon. So that's wonderful. So his languages, so you'll need to be a linguist in order to be able to read all his books. So I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit about your life, your interesting life, the migrations you've had physically and linguistically.
Thank you. At first, thank you for coming. I speak English, but not very well, so I will speak French, and Madam Uma will be translated to English. Donc, je suis venu en Lituanie 35 ans, il y a 35 ans.
So he came to Lithuania 35 years ago.
And my wife is Lithuanian. J'étais à l'époque, je reste bien sûr d'origine ukrainienne. Et pendant cette période en Lituanie, j'ai commencé à écrire en lituanien. Et maintenant, j'écris plutôt en lituanien, mais aussi je continue à écrire en ukrainien.
So I will speak in the first person as he's saying. So I am a Ukrainian, but my wife is Lithuanian and I've been living in Lithuania since a long time. So I started writing in Lithuanian. So now I write more in Lithuanian, but also in Ukrainian sometimes.
And aussi, j'écrivais un peu en français, mais en fait, je préfère d'être traduit en français. Et même quand mon livre apparaît en Lituanie et l'éditeur ukrainien voulait publier ce livre, j'ai traduit moi-même depuis lituanien vers ukrainien. Parce que traducteur qui faisait des essais de traduire, il est traduit mal. Quoi. Donc moi-même, comme c'est ma langue maternelle, donc j'ai réécrit en ukrainien sans aucun problème.
So my books have been translated from Lithuanian back to Ukrainian, but as it happened, the translation was not always done very well. So sometimes I have myself taken up the task of translating my books from Lithuanian back to Ukrainian.
Mais en France, j'ai un grand éditeur français, Actes Sud, qui traduit mes livres. Et donc, c'est lui qui s'occupe de traducteur.
Yeah. So, but I also get published in France by the publication house, which is called Actes Sud. So they are the ones who take up the work of the translation into French and in other languages.
Ce livre-là a été traduit directement de lituanien.
Okay. This book has been translated directly from Lithuanian into English.
So do you feel that having access, such fluent access to so many different languages, do you feel that that has fed your creative imagination? Do you feel your writing is different when you approach it from one language versus another?
Alors, avec toutes ces influences linguistiques, est-ce que vous pensez qu'il y a des influences quand vous écrivez d'une langue et d'une autre?
En fait, c'est vrai que je suis multilanguage writer et même il y a quelques ans, j'ai participé à une réunion en France où il y avait les écrivains comme moi qui écrivaient en quelques langues. En quelques langues. En quelques langues. Et donc, c'est un phénomène qui existe dans la littérature. C'est rare, ça existe. Et donc, parfois, ils traduisent eux-mêmes, quoi. Et ce qui concerne cette question, c'est que, bien sûr, quand j'écris en autre langue, ça ne fait pas grande influence. Je vais expliquer pourquoi après.
So there have been instances of many writers who write in several languages and who translate themselves from one language to the other. But so it's not really such a a unique thing. But coming to the question, when I write in different languages, I don't feel that there is any influence of a particular language on my writing, and I will explain why.
Parce que, en fait, ma prose, elle est écrite par une langue très minimaliste. Et je ne joue pas avec les mots, avec des épithètes. Et donc, au niveau du style, c'est très simple. Et c'est pourquoi, en n'importe quelle langue, je peux, langue que je maîtrise, bien sûr, je peux écrire sans aucune difficulté parce que, encore que je suis philologue selon ma profession, c'est-à-dire spécialiste des langues.
So the reason is because I write in a very simple language. So I don't play a lot with wordplay and puns and complex structures. So I find it very easy to go from one language to the other. And also he is a philologist by profession. So that is, he is a specialist in several languages. So that also makes it easier.
In fact, I feel that the translation into English was also excellent and also perhaps aided by the fact that your language gets to the essence of things rather than, use, like you said, a lot of similes and things that are language specific. They're more idea specific. But in order to get an idea of his writing, which is really, really brilliant, and I was struck by the fact that his writing there's a deep chord of spirituality in Jaroslavas's writing. He is unafraid to address very large questions such as man's relationship to immortality and mortality, man's relationship to time, the sort of the meaninglessness of modern existence. In some ways, he reminds me of a combination of Kafka, who focuses more on man and society, and Chekhov, who focuses very deeply on man's relationships with other men, other people. So I think that's very unique in your writing, and I was wondering if we could do a reading of two of your stories, really like a 1 minute each. Maybe I'll do one and you can do one. And then the audience will get an idea for the flavor of your writing, and then we can take it from there. So I'll do the reading and then. So the first reading I'm going to do is from a story called The Grand Piano Room. In this story, a man who's living in his home, he has a room for his piano, he has a room for his paintings, he has a study where he writes, he has spaces in his house, and his wife has another room. So he has spaces in his house for him to indulge in creative, spiritual activities. But then slowly one day he wants to go into his piano room and he finds the room itself has disappeared. And this is the story. What I'm going to tell you happened unexpectedly and most importantly, without any explanation. One morning, feeling the pull of the piano, I just needed to run my fingers across the cool, snow-white keys. I decided to go to the grand piano room, only to find that there was no door at the end of the corridor. No door to the grand piano room. I'm one of those people who only believe in reality to an extent, not totally, as it were, though nobody could say that I wasn't a rational thinker. However, my reaction to the inexplicable becoming reality is not fast and is never hysterical. I look at something like that primarily as a phenomenon. Though it's not clear to me what has happened, it must have some inherent meaning. Because for goodness sake, a whole room in the house can't just disappear like that. without a reason. So I was wondering, when you wrote this room, so the way I felt about it was that in, let's say, communist societies and modern societies, when a person is alienated from the spiritual parts of himself, there is a certain sort of despair and confusion that happens. I was wondering if you could talk about what you were thinking about it when you were writing the story.
En fait, c'est vrai qu'il y a cette parallèle avec l'Union soviétique, mais quand j'écrivais ce texte, je ne pensais pas de l'Union soviétique.
So it is true that there was a certain parallel you could find with the Soviet Union, but as I was writing this book, I did not think of the Soviet Union at all.
Mais je pense que c'est l'expérience, c'est-à-dire c'est mon passé en Union soviétique qui a influencé et qui a donné cette idée que, parce qu'en Union soviétique existait l'appartement collectif. Ça veut dire c'est l'appartement où habite pas une famille, mais 3, 4 familles avec une cuisine, avec une toilette, mais avec 3, 4 chambres.
So, but this question of space, it does evoke the Soviet Union, because in the Soviet Union, people were in an apartment. There was practically one family living in every room, and they had a shared kitchen. So there was this feeling of oppressiveness and the constraint of space.
Et c'était affreux. C'était affreux parce que 3, 4 familles avec les enfants, avec grands-parents, dans un appartement.
And it was horrible because there are 3, 4 families with grandparents and children, and they're all living in one single apartment.
Et comme je suis aussi philosophe, ça m'a posé des questions. Est-ce qu'on peut rester toi-même dans cette ambiance quand il y a tant de monde dans un petit espace?
And as a philosopher also, as I ask myself that question, so can one stay true to oneself? Can one be oneself when one lives like this, in this manner?
Et est-ce que notre spiritualité ne dépend pas de l'espace?
And does our spirituality, our sense of spirituality, not depend on availability of space?
Bien sûr, on peut être profond, spirituel, dans la mine, quand il y a beaucoup de gens, j'ai oublié le mot en français, dans la foule, voilà, dans la foule. Mais pour être spirituel dans la foule, il faut avoir une certaine qualité. Ça peut être les gens religieux, ceux qui habitent dans les monastères, mais la plupart des gens ne sont pas comme ça.
Of course, one can be spiritual while being in a collective, in a group, but for that you would have to be particularly religious minded, or maybe part of a structure like a monastery. But for the ordinary person, it's very difficult to be in a large group with constrained space and be spiritual at the same time.
Mais il faut préciser qu'il s'agit d'être dans le groupe, pas comme ici. Ici, nous aussi, nous sommes dans le groupe. Mais toute la journée, c'est-à-dire habiter dans un petit espace. Il s'agit plutôt de ça.
So it's not like being in a group as we are in a group here, but living together in a reduced small space. So that's what he means by group.
Parce qu'après cette réunion, vous reviendrez chez vous où vous pouvez rester seul.
Because after this meeting, after today, you go back to your homes and you will be alone with yourself.
Dans mon texte, grand piano room, Et les gens, ils n'ont pas cette possibilité.
Yeah, but in our story, this grand piano room, the people don't have this possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, this whole idea of spirituality, Jaroslavas is also a philosopher and has published several philosophical essays as well. I was also wondering about your relationship to Indian spirituality and Indian philosophy. And could you let us, talk a little bit about that?
Est-ce que vous pouvez parler aussi de votre relation avec la philosophie indienne?
Oui, c'est vrai que dans certains sens, la philosophie et la culture indienne m'ont influencé beaucoup, surtout quand j'avais 20 ans, quoi. Et quand quand je faisais mes études de troisième cycle pour préparer le doctorat à Moscou.
So it is true that Indian spirituality has influenced me a lot, and particularly since my young days when I was a graduate student preparing for my doctoral thesis in Moscow.
Parce que c'était à l'époque de Gorbatchev, et bien que les livres comment dire, religieux indiens, comme Mahabharata ou Upanishad, c'était pas accessible. Mais déjà à l'époque soviétique, les livres comme ça étaient publiés illégalement.
So that was the period of Gorbachev, and slowly we were getting access to books on Indian spirituality and religion like Mahabharata and the Upanishads, which was not possible earlier. So these books were being published illegally,
Et
literally.
je me souviens que j'ai acheté Mahabharata traduit en russe pour le salaire pour le somme qui était à l'époque le salaire mensuel.
And I bought the Mahabharata in that period, translated into Russian at an amount which was equivalent to my monthly salary.
Parce que les gens avaient à l'époque la faim de nourriture spirituelle, parce que c'est seulement l'idéologie soviétique qui régnait et on n'avait pas accès aux autres livres, comme par exemple, je ne pouvais pas lire Freud, Nietzsche, c'était impossible.
Right. So because people needed, they had a hunger for spiritual books, because it was not possible at the time of the Soviet Union because of their ideology. So, for example, I could not read Freud, I could not read Nietzsche, everything was banned.
Et en fait, je peux dire que j'étais aussi cette faim, spirituelle. Et donc, quand j'ai acheté ce livre, j'ai mangé tout de suite Mahabharata. J'ai mangé Mahabharata, si on parle des femmes, tout de suite.
So I also was hungry for all this. So you could say that I also ate Mahabharata.
Je pense que ça donnait beaucoup d'idées après. Quand j'écrivais mes livres après, je ne pensais pas de ces livres. Mais l'idée même, l'essentiel, c'est que j'ai pris de ces livres, c'est que notre vie, c'est une chose. Il y a l'autre vie qui est plus vraie, quoi. Il y a, en fait, Maya, c'est pas vrai, quoi. Et tandis que illusion, et cette idée que notre vie est illusion, après, je pense, est transformée dans mon style surréaliste, parce que qu'est-ce que c'est que le surréalisme?
So, but reading these books gave me a lot of ideas for my further writings, even though I did not directly think of the Mahabharata while I was writing them. For example, the notion of Maya, which is illusion. So, life, I understood that life, there is our life, but there is also another one. So, what is illusion? And that led me to surrealism, because surrealism is also a kind of, it's also talking about a kind of illusion.
Illusion in reality. Illusion in reality.
Oui, le surréalisme, c'est notre vie comme sommeil. Et donc, le sommeil, ça correspond à la notion de Maya.
Yeah, so surrealism is also like a kind of sleep, a kind of illusion, and that leads back to Maya.
So now I'd like to do a second reading of his first story. And this is called The Last Day. Uma, would you read? I've marked it. Okay, so this is his first story. It's called The Last Day. and it's about, I guess the reading will be self-evident. At first, it just seemed bizarre. 300,000 people from all over the world filed a lawsuit against the madman in whose warehouse the 8 million volumes were heaped. He had poured nearly all his wealth into printing the thick volumes. It was blasphemy. He was obviously mad. Only a lunatic would print the dates of the deaths of everybody on the planet. Then, as if that wasn't enough, having pulled that fast one, he immediately lost the ability to speak. Whether he had been truly deprived of speech, nobody knew, but he never uttered a word from the moment the police arrested him. In fact, he didn't react in any way to their questioning. Then, soon after he died, during a routine interview, his death was odd. He fell from his chair as if he had been shot by an arrow. The investigator's assistant who witnessed the incident said it had been exactly like that, as if an arrow let fly by some Indian had flown through the window and pierced the heart of the offender. There was, of course, no arrow, and the windows had not only been closed, but were also tightly covered by a metal shutter throughout the investigation. So this is a story in which a lunatic somehow prints the exact deaths and the manner of deaths of all the people on the earth. And not only is it in the warehouses, he's also uploaded it online and everybody can access it. And what does it mean for people to know about their impending and exact time and manner of mortality? How does that affect the way they live their lives? So this is a really profound story, and it really made me think a lot. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your story and also about, like you were saying, speculative fiction and how it's able to address these kinds of larger questions, both in Europe and modern speculative fiction these days.
Mais en fait, ce texte de Last Day raconte sur un livre où les dates de mort de tous les gens de la planète est fixée.
So this, like Kavita said, this story talks about a book where the dates of all the people on the planet are, printed.
Et tout d'abord, les gens qui avaient accès à ce livre, ils pensaient que c'était une blague.
So the people who found the book thought that it was a joke.
Mais du coup, le livre commençait à être réalisé. Ça veut dire quand il y avait la date qui s'approchait, ta date de mort, tu mors dans n'importe quelle forme, peut-être c'est un accident, c'est une maladie, n'importe quoi, mais tu mors obligatoirement.
Okay. So, but people began to die. So on the dates on which it was marked. So by different causes, it could be an illness or an accident or something, but people started dying.
Et donc, comme j'écris sur human being, sur être humain, toujours. Et ça m'a posé des problèmes. Qu'est-ce que peut sentir et penser human being, être humain, dans ce contexte-là?
So I started thinking, in such a situation, what would a human being think and feel?
Et est-ce que nous voulons savoir la date de notre mort?
Do we really want to know the date of our death?
Est-ce que ça nous donne quelque chose de bien ou de mal?
Does it do something, is it beneficial to us or does it cause any harm?
Et donc, quand vous, après lire ce texte, vous pouvez comprendre quelle est la réponse.
So after reading the story, you will realize what is the answer to this question.
Parce que c'est une famille où il y a les parents, le fils et la fille. Et donc, ils ont, comment dire, décidé, non, certains d'eux, décidé de, quand même, de lire ce livre et apprendre sa date de mort. Et donc, après ça, toute leur vie a changé complètement.
So the story, it narrates the story of a family of four, so parents and a son and a daughter. And they decide to go through the book and find the dates of their death. And that changes their life forever.
Au niveau de l'âme, des sentiments et au niveau de cerveau, de pensée, tout a changé.
Yeah, at the emotional level, but also at the mental, intellectual level, everything changes.
Et donc, ils ont appris que leur fille va lire, il me semble, 80 ans. Et sa femme, encore 15 ans, le père aussi, 10 ans. Et par contre, son fils, adolescent, va mourir bientôt dans un mois, il me semble.
So they find out that the wife, the mother is going to live till, the daughter is going to live till she's 80 plus, the mother for another 15 years, the father also to an advanced age, but the son is going to die in a week's time.
Et donc, j'ai montré le dernier jour de... Non, je montrais un peu en avance, mais la culmination, c'est le dernier jour de vie de son fils. Et qu'est-ce qu'il se comporte pendant ces jours-là.
So I try to show what happens on the last day of the boy's life, how each of them reacts and how they behave.
Et donc, finalement, ils ont décidé de regarder un film. Non, un film céréal, les quatre pour atteindre la mort, parce que la mort doit venir vers la minuit. La minuit, c'est la dernière seconde, et tout doit être mort.
So they all decide to watch a movie together on TV and spend time till midnight, which is the moment when the boy is supposed to die.
Et le final est que il y a les secondes qui passent, et voilà, dernière seconde, vers le minuit, il reste 5 secondes, 4, 3, 0. Il regarde son fils, il reste vivant. Oui.
Okay, so the clock ticks, so it's 11, 59, 58, 53, 52, and then it goes to
You're
zero.
giving the plot away.
That's what I asked
No,
him.
you
I
don't
said, do
wanna-
you want to give the plot away?
No, don't give the plot away. You
No,
guys
no.
have to read the book.
Peut-être-
No, I'm stopping you
Mais
here.
peut-être c'est pas vrai. Donc vous allez comprendre que peut-être ce serait un sommeil, la mort. C'est-à-dire que, vous voyez, dans ce texte, ça veut dire que l'amour pour les gens qui ne sont pas croyants, c'est la fin du tout. Mais pour les gens croyants, je pense que c'est un peu comme notre vie est sommeil, quoi, illusion. Donc, et l'amour, c'est pas vraiment l'amour si tu continues à vivre dans une autre forme.
Yeah, so according to him, if you are a believer, if you are a non-believer, then death is the end. There is nothing after death. But if you are a believer, then there is something which goes beyond death. So it's like going into a kind of a sleep or an illusion or something, and then you have another chance at life.
Et par contre, il y a un film qui était ici présenté selon ce texte il y a 2 jours.
Yeah, so 2 days back, actually, the movie which was made based on the story was projected at T-Hub, if any of you have watched it.
Et enfin, la fin de ce film, c'est que le directeur du film montre le pendule, quoi, et que, non, électronique. Écran, c'est quoi monte. Voilà. Et donc, ça diminue jusqu'à 0, et le dernier cadre, c'est le 0. Et c'est tout. Après, on peut deviner qu'est-ce qui se passe
So
après.
in the movie also they show a digital clock, and you know the time is ticking away, and then it comes down to 0, and then you have to find out what happens next.
And actually, your writing is so, like I had said before, so cinematic. You can see it unfold, and yet I don't see you using. I suffer in my writing from the curse of using too much description because and my husband has pointed that out. That it's, but I just love to describe things. Sometimes I feel it's not necessary because you're able to do it with such a minimal effort, a minimal language for description. Yet you're so evocative. But I'd also like to move on to speculative fiction in general. Speculative fiction that you see these days, it's very popular right now. Everybody's writing it, especially in the West. But I don't see everybody exploring the kind of important questions and the enormous questions that you explore. I was wondering if you could let us know a little bit about speculative fiction in Europe. What kind is it? How do writers, serious writers, engage with it versus what you see in popular culture?
Donc, elle disait que vous parlez un peu de ce genre de littérature spéculative en Europe, et comment les écrivains sérieux approchent parce que vous écrivez de manière très efficace avec un minimum de restrictions. Donc, comment est-ce que le genre est traité en Europe?
Oui, c'est vrai que je suis plus connu comme l'auteur des romans dystopiques en Lituanie, en Ukraine, en France. Et c'est maintenant, ça devient à la mode, les livres dystopiques, parce que, en fait, nous commençons à vivre dans un monde fantastique.
So yeah, there is a lot of dystopian literature which is written these days because we also live in a very fantastic kind of world.
Et que je suis plus connu comme l'auteur des nouvelles dystopiques que l'auteur des textes surréalistes de short prose.
And I am known for dystopian fiction, so that is why the publishers have approached me for these kind of stories.
Mais je trouve qu'il y a ce lien assez étroit entre les textes surréalistes et les textes dystopiques.
But I think there is a clear link between surrealistic and dystopian kind of literature.
Because, parce que et dans un texte surréaliste et dystopique, les deux ne sont pas les réalistes. C'est le monde imaginaire.
Because in dystopian and surrealist novels, the action is happening in a kind of imaginary world.
Parce que dans la réalité, dans notre maison, les chambres ne se disparent pas.
Because in our world, rooms don't shrink.
Et aussi, les livres avec les dates de mort ne sont pas publiés.
And there are no books published with the deaths of our deaths.
On sait pas jamais.
Dates of our deaths.
On ne sait pas jamais, peut-être ils vont être publiés, les livres comme ça, les prochains mois.
We don't know if this kind of book will be published or not, but for the moment it's not.
Pour le moment, c'est pas la réalité. Et donc, les romans dystopiques en Europe, ils deviennent à la mode. J'ai écrit 4 romans dystopiques.
So dystopian literature is becoming popular in Europe, and I have written 4 novels.
Ils étaient les 4 traduits en français. Et il y avait beaucoup de réactions en France. Et un de ces romans qui s'appelle Espace lointain est devenu le livre de l'année en France. De l'année.
So,
Le meilleur livre de l'année, meilleur livre.
voilà. So one of his novels, it's called Espace lointain. That means the faraway space. I mean, literally translated. It was one of the most popular books, declared the book of the year in France, the translation in French.
En deux mots, c'est un roman sur le monde des aveugles. Il y avait un jeune homme qui commençait à voir.
So there is another novel which I have written about the blind, the visually challenged, and one of them starts seeing, regains sight.
il a commencé à raconter aux autres, à ses proches, ce qu'il voit. Et la réalité est effroyable. Et ils l'ont pris pour un fou.
So he starts narrating to the others what he sees. And it is so terrifying what he is describing that everybody thinks he's gone mad.
Et le système a commencé à lui faire guérir parce qu'il pense que c'était hallucination. Quoi,
So
ce qu'il
everyone
voit.
thinks that he is hallucinating, and then there is a whole system put in place to cure him.
So it's like, in some ways, it's the person who is blind who can actually see reality. It's
Exactly.
beautiful. I think we are actually going to. I'm going to give the audience some, opportunities to ask you a question. But I do want to actually point out something that has to do with both Indian spirituality and the grand piano room. No, sorry, the last day with the books. We have a system called the Nari Shastram, which is like a set of books that are supposed to have printed the fates of everybody in the world who's ever been born and who's ever going to die. And that's there in some various temples. So you can actually go and, give your details and they'll sort of bring it up. So in some ways, we have a twist on your story.
Je tombe bien sur le cadre.
So I'm in the right place.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'd like to open up the floor for some questions.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. My question is, what is your relationship with the languages that you know? And do you feel like any language was forced upon you in any sense? We feel that about English in a way. And the follow-up question, what language do you think in, if that's okay?
Alors, quelle est la relation que vous avez entre les plusieurs langues que vous connaissez? Est-ce qu'il y a une langue qui a été forcée? Vous étiez obligé d'apprendre. Et what was your second question? Donc, quelle langue est-ce que vous réfléchissez?
C'est une bonne question.
That's a good question.
Parce que, en fait, bien sûr, j'ai choisi ces différentes langues en suivant mon destin. Quoi. Parce que je suis né en Ukraine, donc, bien sûr, ma langue maternelle était ukrainienne.
So I chose languages according to my destiny. So I was born in Ukraine, so Ukrainian was my mother tongue.
Après, je faisais mes études de troisième cycle pour préparer le doctorat dans l'Institut de littérature à Moscou. Donc, j'étais obligé d'apprendre russe. Quoi.
Then I studied, continued my studies for doctoral research in Moscow. So I had to learn Russian.
Et en fait, à vrai dire, le russe était la langue de l'État. Donc, je connais ces langues, mais j'ai amélioré à Moscou sur langue au niveau que je pouvais écrire comme une texte comme langue maternelle.
So, of course, I had already learned Russian because that was the state language. But I could improve it further, take it to a level where I could write an academic text, a thesis.
Après, je suis venu en Lituanie parce que j'ai fait connaissance avec ma femme aussi dans le même institut de littérature. Ma femme préparait le doctorat aussi comme moi. Et donc, j'étais obligé d'apprendre le lituanien au niveau parfait. Quoi.
Then I met my wife in Moscow, and she was also doing her doctoral research, and she is Lithuanian. So we moved to Lithuania, and then I learned Lithuanian almost, perfectly well.
Et finalement, en français, c'est ma femme est professeure de français à l'université de Vilnius. Et donc, on était entouré par le français à Vilnius, et puis on avait beaucoup de séjours en France. Donc, comme ça, j'ai appris français.
And my wife was a French teacher, lecturer in the University of Vilnius, and we were always moving in circles where there were French people, and always also went to France several times, so he ended up learning French.
donc, on revient de nouveau au destin, quoi.
So again,
Ce
it's a
destin.
matter of destiny.
Destin qui a formé.
Et dans quelle langue est-ce que vous réfléchissez?
Et ça, c'est une bonne question parce que je ne sais pas.
So which language do I think in? I don't know.
À vrai dire, je ne sais pas en quelle langue je pense. Peut-être, je ne sais pas, je ne peux pas dire.
He doesn't
Non,
know.
peut-être pas au français, mais peut-être lituanien.
Maybe Lithuanian.
Thank you. Hopefully, you'll move to Hyderabad and you can write. So you can start writing in Telugu as well and enrich our literature. I think Swati has.
Thank you so much for the one question you raised. It's very interesting, which is that of relationship between space and spirituality. And I think you were wondering about if a lack of personal space will be detrimental to having spiritual thoughts or ideation. And on that background, I was thinking about India, because even in India, we don't really have personal space, but India is known for its spiritual framework and spiritual foundation. So I'm wondering, instead of personal space, is it about the framework where you are living? And also, if spirituality is a reaction to uncertainty, and whatever happened in the days when spirituality came about was the days when people had to depend on, or they were facing so much uncertainty from weather and lack of resources. And if that is the reason why spirituality.
So to summarize, basically, it's spiritual. It's a lack of physical space that hinders spirituality, because India has very little space, but we are very spiritual. Or is it uncertainties in the environment that makes you more spiritual? Is that right?
Voilà. Est-ce que c'est l'incertitude? Parce que ici en Inde.
It's not just about.
Non, elle demande. Parce qu'ici en Inde, nous manquons de l'espace, beaucoup. Mais Inde est connue comme un pays spirituel. Alors, est-ce que c'est le manque de l'espace qui crée une certaine incertitude et qui mène à son tour à la spiritualité? Lack of spirituality in New Delhi? Non. Elle dit, ici en Inde, on manque de l'espace. Mais l'Inde est connue pour être spirituelle. Mais le manque, c'est le cadre dans lequel nous vivons qui crée beaucoup d'incertitudes parmi les gens. Et est-ce que c'est cette incertitude qui mènerait à une certaine spiritualité?
Manque d'espace?
Oui, manque d'espace et le cadre dans lequel nous vivons qui crée une certaine incertitude. Parce que la vie est incertaine pour la plupart des gens en Inde. Ils vivent dans beaucoup de précarité.
Voilà.
Et donc, ce sont des conditions qui aussi peuvent contribuer à la spiritualité.
Que le port peut être spirituel.
Voilà, exactement.
Oui, c'est vrai que la pauvreté, le manque de conditions, elle peut être, elle peut avoir influence aux gens et ça, il peut ne pas être spirituel, mais certains gens, la pauvreté pour certains gens, elle est dans le sens que si tu n'as rien, donc tu es au bout de, comment dire, tu es dans une situation difficile, tragique souvent. Et c'est-à-dire dans une situation existentielle, essentielle. Et à cet état essentiel, c'est déjà l'entrée dans un autre monde spirituel. Et ici, très souvent, c'est la religion qui est entrée avec sa comment dire, sa forme de Dieu et tout ça. Mais parce que si les gens ils ont beaucoup de conditions, bien sûr, ça aide dans le sens qu'il peut être élevé et tout ça, et comme dans mon texte sur Grand Piano Room au début. Mais finalement, ici, il y a beaucoup de riches, des riches aussi, qui ont beaucoup de conditions. Est-ce qu'ils sont spirituels? Ça veut dire que c'est un peu au contraire.
So it's like a very complex answer also. So I'll try my best to translate it. So lack of space is also linked to poverty. So sometimes, yeah, we do live in conditions where one is forced to acknowledge, and it can go either way. You can become very spiritual or not in those conditions. But you also have a lot of rich people in India with a lot of privileges. So are they all very spiritual? So does it work the other way? So that is what he's trying to say.
Parce que la religion aussi parle que tu dois passer par les souffrances pour passer par les souffrances, au moins en Europe. Et avec ça, dans un état tragique, tu peux voir au bout du tunnel la lumière.
Because in Europe also you have to go through a lot of suffering. And it's through that suffering that you find the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful and profound way to end the talk. Thank you so much, and thank you for being a wonderful, patient audience.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
I want to tell you, everybody, to pick up the book.
Il faut dire qu'il peut acheter mon livre.
I just want to tell everybody to pick up the book. I urge you to, because I enjoyed it enormously. It's a big book.